We'll show you a sci-fi romance drama film from 2016. Titled Passenger Spoilers Ahead. Watch out and take the interstellar spaceship. Avalon can be seen traveling through space, headed to a colonized world called Homestead 2. All of its quarters are empty. The vessel is on autopilot. The 258 crew members as well as the 5,0 passengers are in hibernation. Suddenly the ship passes through an asteroid belt. That's weakening its shields. Power is diverted to the main shield. But the ship is on a collision course with a giant asteroid suddenly. The asteroid collides with the ship, causing various malfunctions. The ship begins self-reparations, but one of the hibernation pods activates. The passenger awakened is Jim Preston, a mechanical engineer. His pod opens, and an automated system helps with his awakening, telling him that he spent 120 years in suspended animation and that the ship is only 4 months away from Homestead 2. He's told that he will be able to spend that time enjoying the luxurious aspects of the ship. Jim receives instructions about his ID band, his cabin, and the primary activities he's to take part of prior to the arrival on the planet. Excited and nervous to meet the people on the ship, he gets ready, leaves his cabin, and he walks into an automated classroom for an entire learning group. Jim looks a little anxious as the hologram explains the situation on us, calling it overpopulated, overpriced, and overrated. It tells him to hold his questions to the end of the lesson, but Jim keeps asking why he's the only one, sir. He realizes that the hologram can't answer him, and he goes to search for other people. He gets to the main concourse of the ship. No one is there either, but an automated informational desk offers to help. Jim asks to talk to a real person, and it sends him off to talk to a steward. But when he finds that no one is there too, he asks to speak to the captain. When he gets to the bridge, even though he doesn't have access to go inside, he can see that none of the mine crew is awake either. Jim eventually goes to the observatory, where he finds out that the ship is actually 90 years away from Homestead 2. He realizes that he woke up too soon, so he rushes back to the concourse, and he sends a message back to us asking what he should do because he doesn't know how to get back into hibernation. The communication system informs him that the overpriced call TS would take approximately 55 years to get an answer back. Jim is devastated. He walks around and he finds the ship's bar, where he sees another person. As he's talking to the bartender, something seems strange about him. When he goes to get him a drink, Jim realizes that he's an android. It's called Arthur. Jim wants to find out more information from him, but he can't even explain to the android how it's possible for him to be set ahead of time. Jim wakes up in his cabin the next day, and he goes to the cantina where he quickly realizes that most of the things on the menu are reserved for gold-class passengers only. He gets his plain coffee, and he tries to figure out how to fix his hibernation chamber after he gets all the tools. He manages to get it operating, and he lies down inside of the pod. But nothing happens next. He decides to use the tools Ray found to get into the crew's hibernation chambers. That doesn't work either. Small malfunctions happen around the ship. Jim keeps returning to the bar to drink, but mostly to talk to Arthur. The android gives him some advice that convinces him to break into one of the gold-class rooms and he try to have some fun on the ship. Jim tries all the restaurants, the games, the entertainment system. But as time passes, he becomes even more miserable to be there alone. One day, he gets dunked and he wanders around the hibernation pods, when he stumbles into an airlock with space suits designed for spacewalks. Jim gets into a suit and he goes to the airlock, pushes a lever and then the button to release the airlock door. Once outside the ship, he's mesmerized by the view. He's the only conscious human being experiencing that moment in time. Jim releases the magnets on his boots and he floats in space feeling devastated. He comes back inside, takes off the suit, but goes back to the airlock without it on. He pulls the lever ready to end it all, but changes his mind in the last moment. Runs back inside and he slips on a battle. Jim stands up, and he is instantly drawn to a woman in one of the pods, named Aurora. He searches for her files in the directory. Andy listens to her passenger interview, becoming enamored with her. Later he's seen sitting next to her pod, still listening to her interviews. But in the bed he's reading some of her work. Andy is talking to Arthur about her writing. He becomes obsessed with the irony of his situation. Going to another planet for a better life. Waking up early, Andy not getting Sir. Andy finding his perfect woman, only for her to be out of reach. Jim keeps thinking about her, and he starts getting the idea to wake her up too. He talks it over with the android, but he doesn't understand the conundrum. If he wakes her up for his own benefit, he'd be stranding her Sir with him to die on the ship. Jim decides against it first, but as time goes by he can't let it go. Until one day he changes his mind. He goes to her pod and he manages to activate it. As she's waking up and he going through the same process as he did, he hides and he goes back to his room. A little bit later he goes to the main concourse hoping to find her. And he says she is just as confused as he was a year ago. Jim tells her they're the only ones awake, and he takes her to the observatory. Then he tells her that he can't get to neither the crew nor the main commands of the ship. Aurora freaks out and he wants to get back into her pod. When they get to it, Jim explains that there is no more special equipment on the ship that can help them get back into hibernation, effectively telling her that they're stranded. They go back at the concourse, and he tells her that she should rest, since she just came out of hibernation. She feels sorry for him, having to spend more than a year alone on the ship. Jim goes back to the bar, feeling regretful about what he did. He asks Arthur not to tell Aurora that he was the one that woke her up. The next day Aurora wakes up. She goes back to the concourse, and he asks the automated info desk about the hibernation pods. Jim joins her and they go to get breakfast. As they leave, the info desk has some sort of malfunction. In the cantina, Aurora realizes that Jim has been eating the same breakfast for more than a year, and he gets him one of the gold-class menus. They thought about the possibility to fix the pods, but unlike Jim, Aurora isn't ready to give up. She searches through the infirmary, then goes through research documents, eventually ending up at the crew's hibernation quarters, trying to break the doors open. Jim notices more malfunctions throughout the ship. Sometime later, Aurora laments about her life on the Avalon. She rides jogs around the ship and he swims in the pool, becoming more and more aware of her situation. She goes to the cantina to interview Jim, thinking that his story might be interesting. She asks why he immigrated to the colony. Jim answers with slogans from the company first, but then further explains that he hopes that on the new world he could be somebody, he could build a life later. They end up in the observatory, and the Aurora finally shares her reason to be there. Unlike the other passengers on the ship, she has a round-trip ticket. Her idea was to go to Homestead 2, live there for a year and come back to us to become the first journalist that has ever done that, writing the greatest story that ever was. Aurora slowly gives up on finding a way to fix their current predicament, and Jim figures out a way to cheer her up. He takes her dancing to the cinema and to the basketball court. Lastly, he takes her to the bar to meet Arthur. She relaxes for a bit, until she remembers their situation. Jim is left alone with the android, feeling awful about what he's done to her. The next moment he's seen tinkering with something, and in the other